Who am I? The girls them sugar.
Well, I ain't mean to cut you off though, but you want to, let's say you want to introduce the whole Jacob Blake story, and we'll kind of just go back and forth from there.
Yeah, I think everybody's familiar with it. Recently, the viral video of a man was seen to be calmly walking back to his car and then getting arrested, and one of the cops saw him get into the car, shot him in the back 7 times. That went viral, obviously, in the turmoil in the state of the nation right now, in the whole Black Lives Matter movement. It just caught fire immediately. This happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, about 40 miles, I believe, from Milwaukee. And it's since revealed that Jacob Blake is paralyzed from the waist down. It's not determined like if that's permanent or not, but a lot of backlashes came from that. A lot of protests, a lot of riots, a lot of controversy has been stemming from that, from people of both sides. It has drawn a lot of support. It has drawn a lot of criticism. There have been boycotts. There have been, again, like I said, riots and protests. And we're kind of just going to break down the event and then everything that stemmed from it, because it is such a polarizing and controversial event.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's just hop right into it. I'll give some of my views on it. It's a tough situation for me because the end result is something that I don't agree with. The situation itself, for the most part, of how it was handled, I can't really say, especially not legally, there's anything wrong with what the cops did. But definitely just in the grand scheme of things, like they were just doing their job to a degree. So they arrived on the scene. They were already aware that Jacob Blake had a warrant, so they were going to take him to jail. No matter what that situation was, they just would find him. So they found him there, knew he had a warrant. They showed up. Apparently, there was some type of event going on with 2 women and Jacob Blake. Jacob Blake has kids in the car. He was driving the car and things of that nature. They got there. They tried to arrest him. From what the reports are saying, they got into some type of scuffle. I think there were 3 cops there. I've been seeing something about a 4th cop somewhere around that area, but the video was only showing 3. The 3 cops, this was not on video, is them supposedly getting into altercation, tasing Jacob Blake, roughing him up a little bit. This was all before the video. I'm not sure how at that point he got up and managed to start walking, which is where we seen the video. Walked to the car, opened the door. The cops following with a gun, shot him 7 times in the back. So that's where I kind of that's where I tend to dislike what happened, because again, I said this about the last time with the gentleman that was shot in Atlanta. If it's just me and you, or it's me and 3 other people, whatever the case may be, I like my chances, not even being trained to whatever standard cops are. I like my chance to being able to subdue that man without deadly force. So they tased him. I understand. They attempted to get him in a headlock, to put handcuffs on him. None of that worked for some reason, and that's like a fault to the cops to me. I don't understand how all 3 of you men can't get one man in handcuffs safely. If you had to rough him up, that's fine. If you have to put hands on him, if you have to take him to the ground, if you have to tase him, all that stuff is things that's within your power to do. You should be able to accomplish getting him apprehended without actually using 7 shots from a pistol at close range. Even when he shot him at close range, I didn't really feel that he was a threat. Now, the cop couldn't have known that at the time. There was a knife somewhere in the car. Some people saying it was out of reach of Jacob Blake, so that was not what he was going in there for. There's no real audio. I mean, you can hear, but you can't really hear what Jacob Blake is saying. You can't really hear what the cop is saying to Jacob Blake. So we're missing some of the context in this, but I can't see him being followed to his car and then shot 7 times in the back as being the most reasonable outcome of that situation at that point. To me, it's a lack of training. It's a lack of training by cops. It's a fear. It's a thing that's, they go out to these situations and they're fearful of what's going to happen, and that's reasonable. But unfortunately, that's the job that you picked. There's no boo-hoos for that. There's no boo-hoos for people in the military that go overseas and they can't just say they're scared, so they don't do their job properly. Pilots can't say they're scared to fly a plane and then crash a plane. Like there's certain jobs where lives are in your hand and you have to be willing to make the right decisions at all times. If you can't do that, then you can't be a cop. And it's simple as that. The standard is too low to me. And that's why this situation happened.
I feel you, and I agree. I don't condone. I really don't like the end outcome with somebody just getting shot in the back 7 times, especially when you got multiple officers trying to subdue them. But I think at a certain point, we have to start holding people accountable, bro. Like, and it's not the popular thing to say. It's not it kind of goes against our narrative, and it kind of makes you sound like insensitive. But I had the same criticism in the Rayshard Brooks case. It's like the cops are there trying to arrest you. You have an outstanding warrant, one of them being for like felony sexual assault, and you trying to get into a car. There are some disputed facts. So a lot of what I'm going off of, it hasn't been proven. This is just what's being reported in the media. So by all means, correct me in the comments. Let me know if you have a different opinion, but I'm just going off of some of the facts that I've read. If you have that warrant out for your arrest and you're attempting to flee the scene and you have kids in the back of your car, you can't really fault the officer for escalating the situation. If they tried all these non-lethal means of trying to wrestle you down, I think it was 2 cops pulled their taser to try to do all that, and they still were unsuccessful. In a cop's mind, when you're in an altercation like that, yes, us on the outside looking in have the benefit of the doubt of seeing the whole picture, being in slow motion to say this is the wrong decision. But if you've been in a fight, you're not really thinking straight. Especially if it's been disputed that he had a knife the whole time. Like in the video, they were telling him, like, drop the knife. So that's something that they'll have to go to court to prove. Did he have the knife the whole time? Was it just in the vehicle? So it's like, if this person had a weapon or they had the means to hurt the officer and they're going into an unknown environment where they could have another weapon, they could have a gun, they could be attempting to flee the scene, I can see how that situation got escalated. I don't like seeing black men get shot. I don't like seeing black men get killed by the police, but at the same time, we have to hold people accountable and say, once you resist arrest, you kind of waive the right to play the victim, because like you escalated that. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of people have a problem accepting the fact, like, oh, I don't think this was right, or I don't think this was justified. But I think you said it before in the previous podcast, your day to argue that is in court. You getting arrested, that's not your time to argue, because you resisting arrest is a crime. If you don't think that any of that is justified, go to court and deal with that. But once you start to fight with the cops, once you start to fight back, you run the risk of getting shot. You run the risk of getting assaulted. You run the risk of, getting into an altercation with the cops. And I don't think that we can just look at this and throw out all blame and put it all on the cops. I just don't think that that's a fair assessment, and that's an honest assessment of what happened in this case.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. Jacob Blake wasn't doing right. Like, this situation is a lot different from a lot of other situations we've seen, because a lot of the situations that we've seen going before this were situations where the cops are showing up. They don't necessarily know who this person is. They're trying to apprehend them. Things happen, and a black man's ended up dead, right? That's kind of the gist of it. In this situation, they fully intended to get to that scene and take him to jail. Like that was their plan. They were planning to come there, arrest him, take him to jail based off of that warrant that he had. Maybe several warrants. I'm not sure. It's kind of conflicting information. So I understand that. And I don't put all the blame on the cops. Which is why I say, for the most part of that thing, had they ended at taser, had it ended at a little bit of some punches, maybe some kicks, or I don't really know what to say about that. Had it ended about them taking to a ground and put him in a headlock, had it ended at that point and he was apprehended and taken to jail, I don't even think we're talking about this right now. I just don't. I don't think that we're talking about what this situation at all. And I don't think a lot of other things that's unfolding that we'll talk about later would happen either, because that to me is acceptable, at least to me. If you're resisting arrest, if you potentially have a weapon, there's things that the cops are going to have to do. They're going to have to put hands on you too. They're going to have to try to harm you too, because at that point you might be trying to harm them. So just as a person, I can see that. I can get behind that. I'm not against that part. The part I'm against, to me, is just to letting loose of that pistol so easily. Like it's too much. It's too much for me. It's too much for me to see him, follow him with that gun, tell him to stop. I understand he was resisting arrest. I understand that. But if what we know to be true is that before all this happened, they were trying to apprehend him with three grown men were trying to apprehend one man and couldn't do that. To me, that's on them. That's a lack of training. They have to be able to do that. It's one person. To me, that's unacceptable. To me, as a cop, that's when your means of your last resort is now being elevated because of your lack of competency. You lack the ability to do your job properly, so now you have to go to a deadly force type of thing. If there were other cops there, it would have been different. Maybe so. Maybe they would have been able to arrest them. I don't know what happened when they initially got there. I don't know what type of talks they had. I don't know if they tried to de-escalate the situation. I'm not sure about any of that. I can't say. It's not out there for me to read. But from what I know right now, to me, it's a lack of competency by those cops that led to a death. It's in combination with resisting arrest, 100%, but those two things in combination is what led to not a death, but at least 7 shots to the back of a man.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's their job, though. They exhausted all their efforts. And there's a video showing them tussling with Jacob Blake in another camera angle. There is video of that. They tried that. At what point do we say, yo, y'all, now we can't do their job? Now you are they just supposed to give up? Like, I don't understand the alternative. Like, they're trying the non-lethal ways. They tried like wrestling them to the ground. They tried the tasers. They tried to apprehend them that way. If a person still is resisting and they're successful in that resisting, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to just be like, all right, you got the best of us. All right, here, you free to go. Better luck next time? No, like that's not the role of the police. Their job is to apprehend you. And if as you resist and as you start to fight them off and as you're successful in that, you're a threat now. You're becoming increasingly a threat. We don't know your capabilities. We can't subdue you with these non-lethal forces. You won't comply with that. So how else are they supposed to do their job? We can't look back knowing all the facts, knowing that there was no gun, knowing all of this. And because he survived, say like, okay, they should have done that. It's so easy to do that. But in the heat of the moment, the cops can't reasonably have all of these facts. They can't reasonably assume that somebody who has felonies out there, who is resisting arrest, who won't be subdued with the taser, doesn't have a weapon in the car or isn't really willing to flee the scene or possibly hit them with the car. Like, how are they to know all of these things in the heat of the moment? I can't get mad at the cops for taking that approach because they exhausted every other effort that they had. And at some point, we can't keep blaming the cops when bad things like this happen, especially when they do their job the right way. They're trying to do it with non-lethal force. To say that, oh, y'all should have been able to do that. Hey, if they don't, their job doesn't stop. They still have to apprehend this person. This person still had a felony. He still had the police called on him because they wanted him to leave the premises and he had took some keys. It's actually disputed that car that he was getting into wasn't even his car with the kids in the back. That wasn't even his. It was his wife's car, and that's the keys that he took. So if that comes out again in the court of law, who's to say that? What are they supposed to do? Just let him go? Especially with felony sex assault charges. And then I think one of them was against like a minor. You're just going to let him drive away with kids? Come on, bro. Like we have to look at this objectively. It doesn't sound good. It's not easy to say. It's not easy. It's not an easy pill to swallow, but we have to start taking some accountability because every time we skew these cases to fit our narrative, we set the precedent of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And we have to start holding ourselves accountable because if we don't hold ourselves accountable, we embolden and we empower these people that we'll talk about in the next situation to take the law into their own hands because we continually ask for the cops to do less, to do less, to do less. And then we empower this silent majority to come in and step in and do more and fill that gap that we're that we're asking the police to take. And that's not what we want. That's not what we want. That doesn't get anybody, that gets people killed. So we have to start taking some accountability. If you want to argue that arrest, if you want to fight that case, do that in a court of law. Don't give them a reason to shoot you. And I know it sounds like some cop out. It sounds like some Uncle Tom, some cool shit to say, but like, bro, don't resist. It's that simple. It's that simple. Like, yo, it don't sound cool. It don't fit the narrative, but don't do it. You don't get shot if you don't resist.
I don't disagree with you at all. And I want to be clear about that. I don't disagree with you at all. Because I think that the criticism that's going on around this case from our community it's not in the right place. There is criticism to be given to me. That's my only difference between our argument. There is criticism to give. I'm still on the side of when you go to those non-lethal methods, those should work. I feel confident saying that those should work if you are competent enough to make those work. That's why I'm saying it's a lack of training. It's a lack of competence. That's where the criticism is at. If you're telling me that was an unlawful shooting, you can argue that in court, but I can tell you right now, your defense wouldn't be great. Like, your argument would not be great if you go to court with that and say, like, that was an unlawful shooting. It's just not going to happen, right? It's just they're not going to jail for this. They could possibly lose their job. That's a potential thing. They might get some derogatory statements on their record. Something like that might happen. But really, we should just be pushing for the training portion of it. That's where the criticism should be in. We should be pushing for them to be able to actually use those non-lethal methods so that they can actually arrest somebody. Because, yes, if you try them, that's cool, but clearly you're not doing them at a high degree because it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Like, why did it have to go to that point? Your job is to de-escalate the situation, get somebody that you consider a criminal off the streets, and you can't do that without using your gun. That's, to me, is a failure or something. Whether it be the system, whether it be the way they train, whether it be the men in themselves, something ain't working right if you can't do that. Your job is not to use that gun. Your job is to use that gun at the last possible resort. And I understand that was their last possible resort at that point. They tried it. And it didn't work. My criticism is make it work. That might sound like not fair. That might sound rude to the cops or anything. You can say that, but make it work. That's my criticism. That non-lethal stuff, that those headlocks, those taken to the ground, those tasers, the pepper sprays, make those work. Make those work. It'll be better for you, and it'll be better for your community as well. And that's my criticism.
I feel you, and I'm not necessarily arguing against that. I'm just arguing the fact that, like, people see this situation and automatically conflate it with every other situation that they see. And then they find another video and it's like, oh, well, he wasn't complying and he got, hands put on him, or they did this. And, like, you know what I mean? And we have to look at every situation one-on-one. We can't just take this situation conflated with the George Floyd situation, conflated with the Rayshard Brooks situation, and just say this is like all the same. Like, no, it's not. Every situation is going to be different. Every situation is going to have its own set of facts. It's going to have their own perspectives. And we have to be able to have an open and honest dialogue about each and every one of them. Nobody is perfect. Everybody should be able to withstand that criticism, whether that be the police, whether that be the person who gets shot or resist or who unlawfully gets killed. We have to be able to criticize the whole argument to figure out what exactly happened, what is the best way forward. Because when we start to emotionally look at these situations and we ignore the facts, we end up in situations like a Trayvon Martin, in a Mike Brown case, where nobody gets arrested, nobody gets prosecuted, because we have an unrealistic expectation of what should happen in the law, in the eye of justice. And we have to be mindful of that. We have to read up on the laws. We have to read up on what is actually possible. What are we actually asking for? Are we asking for their arrest? Are we asking for prosecution? What exact charges? What exactly did they do wrong? The moment you can have that, the moment you can do that research and articulate what you want, instead of just saying cops are racist or this wouldn't happen if he was a white man, that's okay. You can say that, you can have that opinion. But when it comes to situations as serious as this, when it comes to protests and riots, when people get killed that spawn off of this, you better know what you're talking about. Because you emotionally being sad or being mad about this, that isn't enough for somebody to lose their life over some misinformation. And that's what gets me so mad about it, is because situations like these get thrown to the media, and then we get manipulated, and we go out on the front lines, and we go out and protest, and we lose our lives for something that we're not really informed on. Mm-hmm. And we empower people on both sides to go to war and clash, and then those people lose their lives as well, who had nothing to do with the original situation because of ignorance. And I'm tired of ignorance. And ignorance spreads so quickly without anybody doing their research and fact-checking these things, and then people lose their lives. That is unnecessary. That is unacceptable. And I'm tired of that.
I hear you. No, I hear you. No, I'm not. I'm with you 100%. Like, it's watching people be manipulated over something like this is sad. I'm not saying there shouldn't be outrage. I'm not saying that. Right. If you want to protest, you can protest, but don't go out there and put yourself in dangerous situations over something like that. That's not the way to do it. There are ways to do it, and that's what you're saying. There are ways for us to make sure that we can get change. We got leverage in certain aspects of America. Like, we can use that leverage to make some type of change, and I'll talk about that with the NBA a little bit later about how you boycott and how you protest and how you do something. You got to have leverage in the fight to negotiate. You can't negotiate with people that just, I mean, put it frankly, they don't care about you. You can't negotiate with people like that. You can't negotiate when you don't have anything to offer in the negotiation. You starting from a leg down when you should be starting with a leg up. It's not beneficial to our community, but to be doing this the way we are doing it. So, but more leadership would be great. More leadership would be great going forward, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, in this situation, cops not going to jail, man. If that's what the outrage is about, they're not going to jail. Like, just be okay with that now, and then move on to what a win is actually. What look at the situation and see what a win you can actually get for your community is, and then go that route. But if the idea of rioting and looting and anything like that is in your mind, take that out of your mind first, because that's just going to take away from the conversation. We don't need to be doing that. We do need to be protesting if that's how you feel. Protesting, there's ways to do that properly. We do need to be negotiating. We do need to be boycotting if that's how you feel. Like, do things that are uncomfortable, but don't do things that are illegal. That's kind of what we need to be doing. So at least that's what I think. But who am I?
Yeah, and just because somebody has a differing opinion, if somebody doesn't necessarily agree with everything that you say, be open to that conversation. Don't just shut them down, call them a coon, call them a sellout, call them a racist. Like, these situations are complex. There's so many different details. There's so many different nuances. Like, be open to have that conversation, whether you disagree with them or agree with them or not. That's how we progress. That's how we make change, and that's how we make the right changes.
Yeah. I think that's all I got on that one. Well said. Shit on both sides. I don't think we disagree, though. I don't think on this. I don't think we necessarily disagree at all.
No. I think we might, depending on judging on what you said earlier, I think we definitely going to disagree on this
Possibly.
next topic.
Possibly.
But
Who am I? The girls them sugar.